Hi guys, and thank you for joining me in this drawing tutorial. This one will be about drawing hair and a face. Before we start, the video itself will be filmed sideways. I drew him sideways as of the size of the drawing, and as my camera is tilted a bit, I was not able to turn it to the correct position because the angle would have been shifted on the face and it looked strange when it changed the position of the face. So I left it sideways. You will still see everything that I do, and it does not make any difference to the drawing process at all. So just to let you know before we start why this one is sideways. All the materials that I use are in the description below. I only use one charcoal pencil actually, which is a sketch and peel charcoal pencil. I do use them preferably because they are easy to use and you don't really need to sharpen them. This is just the charcoal core, and there is this orangey kind of paper wrapped around it, and you can just peel it off when your charcoal core runs off. So you will get more of the core visible when you peel it off. You can sharpen the lead with a regular pencil sharpener. That works great. So if you need a fine point, then this is an easy way to do it. The charcoal dust that you receive when you sharpen it, you can use for shading, which you will see make me in this video as well. The guy that I'm drawing in this video is called Fabian. He's a German model and fitness influencer, and I follow him for quite some time on Instagram, so if you like to follow him as well, I've put the Instagram link in the video, so feel free to have a look. In the very beginning, I always start by drawing the darkest areas, which in this case was starting with the hair, and I always have a look at the reference photo and block in the darkest areas first. At this stage I try to follow the hairs as they naturally go, just to build up some strands. Most importantly, do not try to draw hairs as single hairs, try more to draw them like shapes, so the dark areas and the light areas as they are intended to be, and not like single hairs. You will see how I do it. This is my personal way how I draw hair, which I find quite simple. In most of the times I do not really stick to the reference photo once I've started. I just see that the darks and the light areas are in the mostly correct position, and then I do not really stick on the reference photo that closely, because in the end you will not really notice if every strand of hair is in the exact same position as it was on the reference photo, as again, as I always say, most people do not know the reference photo, and so you just have to take care that everything looks quite nice and fitting together. Once I have blocked in all the darkest areas, I normally use one of my brushes to blend them. You can use actually any brush that you would like to have. I do have the DaVinci Nova Series, but there is no special preference from my side. These are just the brushes that I'm using for years now for my charcoal drawing. So I just stick to them and don't take any other brushes, as they are now my designated charcoal brushes. I do have them in 3 different sizes, but you can just take the size that you feel more comfortable with. For the hairs in the first part, I just took my largest brush that I have for my charcoal drawings and blended everything together. I just went over all the areas, so the complete hair area, and what the brush does, it lifts off some of the charcoal dust that is on the paper and spreads it around to the areas where there is no charcoal dust. You will see that the areas are getting lighter during this process. So you have to repeat darkening the darkest areas again and again and again. And this is basically the process in drawing the hairs as I do them. This process overall takes a couple of minutes, as you have to go back and forth over the hairs, but it is a quite simple process. So nothing really difficult, I would say. Once the complete hair area is covered with charcoal dust, you will see that you cannot go so much darker in the dark areas as you would like to go. And this is the point where I personally start fixing the drawing for the first time. And before I do this, I use my MonoZero Eraser or any eraser that you have available. I do like the MonoZero Eraser because it has a very fine tip and you can make fine lines with it. There are also a pencil eraser that you can use, so these look like a regular pencil and can be sharpened like one, and you can also get a fine point to make fine lines. If you have, you can also use a kneaded eraser. I do not really use them, but if you have one, feel free to use it. And what I do before I fix it, I do lighten up the areas that are the brightest on the reference photo. So make sure you have these areas lightened up again before you fix it, because you will have a harder time getting the charcoal dust off the paper once you fixed it. To fix your charcoal or your graphite, whatever you're going to draw it with, you can use any working fixative. I do use the Jaxell Fixative, which is actually meant for pastels, but it also works very great for charcoal, as it in a way has the same feeling as pastels do. And this works great. It is not yellowing and it's archivable and it works really great and dries fast, so this is my go-to fixative. Not sure if you can get it in your country, wherever you're from and watching this video, but you should find something similar. So every fixative should do the job, I think. What you could use if you only draw for yourself and not plan to sell this artwork, you can also use Hairspray to fix it. It works similar, but it is not archivable because it's not really an art product. So if you plan to sell your work, I suggest using a fixative that is meant for artwork and no hairspray, because you do not know what hairspray does in 20 years. So if it gets yellow or if it destroys the paper or whatever it can do. So if you spend so much time in your artwork, you better don't use the hairspray. Once the layer is fixed, you just complete the process over and over again until your dark areas are as dark as you need them and your highlight areas are as highlighted as you need them. The one thing that you will need to keep in mind with the charcoal on a white paper, make sure you have the charcoal erased as good as you can on the really bright areas, because a white pencil does not work that well on white paper and charcoal. You will get a great effect on toned paper, so like the gray toned or the beige toned papers with charcoal, and then you can add a white pencil over it and it will be bright and shiny. It is not really on the white paper. I can't really tell you why this is the case, but it does not get as bright as you might have wanted to be. So make sure you erase as much as possible to have the highlights. You can use a white pencil, I will do this again later as well, but it does not stand out as much as a regular highlight would do. So you cannot really create the highlights with a white pencil. What you will see me do in almost all of my drawings or paintings, I am not an artist who finishes one area to the end and then moves on to the next area, as some artists do, and whatever your drawing style is, go for it. I usually work on different areas at the same time. It personally helps me balancing the values. So although I'm not really finished with the hairs yet, I have started blocking in the eyebrows and the eyes, and also started some shading in the facial area. There is no need for you to follow this guideline as well. You can just finish one area until it's completed and then move on. Whatever you like most and are most comfortable with, just make it your way. I think it is easier for myself, as in the beginning when I was started drawing, I was really struggling with shading and values, and so I find it easier to do different areas at the same time just to be sure you have the correct values in the end. So I start drawing the eyes and then I go back to the hairs and just see if the values are correct. So if not, I lighten them up again or darken some areas and blend it again. So just to make sure that everything looks fitting together. In terms of drawing the face, I'm not really so much a fan of these how to draw a nose or how to draw an eye videos, tutorials, however you will call them. Probably I will do some myself because they seem to be popular, but it does not really help you in your drawing process if you see someone drawing an eye, because whatever figure or shape you're drawing, it is basically always the same process. Don't see the eye as an eye, so don't tell yourself you're going to draw an eye right now. Just look at a reference photo and draw the shapes that you see, and draw the shadows and the highlights that you see. And so this technique you can adapt to almost every single shape that you can see or imagine. And by following these steps, it makes it easier to you to draw whatever you like. So don't focus so much on the object itself. So don't draw a car or an apple or a face in this time. Just draw the shapes that you see. And when you are new to drawing or painting, it is totally normal that you see things differently in the beginning. So when you start drawing or painting, you will see, for example, the eye, and you will notice that you cannot really copy the eye as it was on a reference photo, which is normal. And the longer you paint or draw, you will start seeing more and more details and more shadings and more different aspects of the shape or the object that you were not able to see perhaps 2 weeks before. So the more you draw or paint, the more details will become visible to you and the more details you can also add to your drawing. Although you start noticing more details on the reference photo, you might not be able to replicate them on your drawing in the first place, but again, the more you draw or paint, the easier it will become to transform all these areas that you see on the reference photo onto your drawing, achieving a more and more realistically look the more you work on it. If realism, of course, is your goal to achieve. But as I'm a realist painter, I think you watching my videos, I suggest that you are going for realism as well, I think. If not, let me know. Occasionally you will see me using a mechanical pencil. I sometimes use these for fine details. The charcoal pencil itself cannot really do fine lines, as you never get a really sharp point for the charcoal pencil. And especially for areas like the eyes or some creases or whatever you really need a fine pencil point for, I use the mechanical pencil. This again is dependent on the size of the drawing that you do. So if you're going to do a life-size portrait, so a quite large one, you might not need it, as the charcoal pencil itself can maintain a fine enough point for a life-size portrait. This was perhaps third life-size, a bit too small for the charcoal point to make a fine line, and therefore I used the mechanical pencil. The shading process for the face itself is quite similar to the one that I used in the hairs. And for blending itself, I am using my brushes again and a blending stump. The blending stump itself has the advantage that you have more control over it than you do have with the brushes, and you can make finer details than you could do with brushes. For blending with the blending stump, you can either use some sanded paper and create some charcoal dust from the pencil, or you can also use the charcoal dust that you receive anyways when you try to sharpen the charcoal lead. Once you have your charcoal dust, just put your blending stump into it and then you can use it for shading. It takes some practice, but you will get used to it quite quickly. And the layering process is quite similar as I showed you for the hairs itself. One of the most important things in drawing faces is actually having the correct values. So having your dark areas as dark as they need to be and the light areas as bright as they need to be. Especially new artists tend to only use midtones. So just having a more or less even grayish layer all over the face and not having the darkest areas as dark as they should be. Which is normal in the beginning as well, as the midtone is a quite safe place to stay. The drawing will look nice and it will look finished in a way, but you will not have the over realistic look that you might have wanted to achieve. So to make this happen, you need to darken the darkest areas. So like the areas where the eye hit the nose, for example, or the small part beneath the lower lip, and depending on the light source itself, wherever the shadow falls on the face. And therefore, for myself, it really helped imagining the face as a three-dimensional form. So if you have your own face in mind, the areas around your eyes, for example, are always darker. And this is the case because your eyes are sitting a bit inside your head. So if you have a look at your own face, your eye socket, for example, sits a bit back compared to your nose. So it has to be darker than the nose itself. The area where your lips are meeting, so the upper and the lower lip are meeting, they are curved. So this area where they meet should be darker than the areas above or below it. Your lower lip will cast a shadow above your chin area. And your complete neck area is further back than your face at all. So this one will be darker as your face will be, just to make it look that it is further in the background than your face is. And these are quite important things. Your ears are in a different plane than your nose is. So the ears should be darker as your nose, for example. So having in mind how your face actually is built, it makes it a bit easier for you to shade things. Very important thing, of course, is having a closely look to your reference photo. There are many things that can go wrong in shaping the face. So if you have some lines too dark, it makes the face look older than it was supposed to be. If you shade some areas too light compared to the other side of the face, it will look a bit off. If you make areas not dark enough, it will not look as three-dimensional as you would like have to look. So have a close look to your reference photo and try to shade the areas as good as you can compared to the reference photo. Other than with the hair, where no one really will notice any difference if you did not stick to the reference photos, people will notice if something is wrong with the face. So make sure that the eyes are correctly done, that they have the same size and are in the same level in the face, and that the nose is not curved in a strange direction, or that the mouth is correctly rendered. So these are the most important points, as every human being will scan a face in about 2 seconds and it will immediately know if something is wrong, so to speak. So, and to make it easier for you, if you think you're done, just step back from the drawing for a little while, so 5 minutes or so, and come back. And once you have a look at it, you will see that everything is okay or that something is not okay. And when you see that something is not okay, you can correct it afterwards. What also helps is when you make a photo of your drawing. I do this myself every now and then. So when I think the drawing itself looks nice, I do make a photo just with my mobile phone and have a look at the photo. And you will immediately see if everything is really okay or if there are some areas that needs to be touched again. And again, in terms of shading, just make sure that the drawing looks overall fitting. So don't really panic out if you do not have the exact same shading as the reference photo has. If the reference photo itself is a bit darker or a bit lighter than your drawing overall, but your drawing overall looks nice and correct, then everything will be fine. Don't worry. On each and every computer screen or tablet screen, each photo will look a bit differently. So I have 3 different ways of watching photos here on my tablet, on my mobile phone and my computer. And on each screen the photo looks differently. On my computer it is a bit brighter than on my tablet, and my mobile phone has a completely different look. So just stick to your drawing and reference all the other shades that you do and values that you do onto your drawing. So there is not really something like a 100% correct value, because each screen displays the photo differently. So just make sure that your drawing itself looks nice and fitting together. Also keep in mind that every part of the face is as important as the other part. When I started drawing, I did not find that the ears are as important as the eyes, for example, or that the mouth is not as important as the nose is. And, well, this is not the case. I personally did not like drawing ears, and I, in a way, still don't really like to draw them, but they belong to most faces, and therefore you have to paint them or draw them. And they are, in a way, as important as the eyes are. Of course, the eyes are the most dominant part of the face, and if something is wrong with the eyes, everyone will notice it right away. If something is wrong with the nose, it takes a fraction of a second longer to notice that one, and if the mouth is a bit off, it will take a bit longer as well. But overall, it's 2 seconds to scan a face, so this is a very, very cropped time frame. And therefore, take your time to draw the ears as you take the time to draw everything else in the face. In some reference photos, the ears will not be as visible perhaps as the eyes or the nose are. Some are a bit blurry or in the shadows. Then just draw what you see. If you see the ears in the shadow, draw it like you see it. So don't try to make an ear, although you don't really see an ear. Just draw the shadows that you can see on a reference photo. Although it will not look like an ear in your imagination, as long as you copy the reference photo, it will look as it has to look for the picture that you are rendering. In the very, very end of the drawing, I start blocking in some of my highlights. And therefore, for charcoal drawings, I typically use a white gel pen. You will not run into archival issues because it will not peel off from the charcoal drawing. You could also use acrylic paint or oil paint, but these will not look as opaque once dried. If you have the brush and pencil titanium powder and touch-up texture, you can make a mix from this one and add it as well. At the point of this drawing, I did not have and do not have it on my own. So the gel pen is my go-to tool to make the highlights on this one. And for the highlights, I most of the times only make these small white dots in the eyes, which are very important. So if you do not have them, although they might not be on the reference photo, if you do not make any of these basically photo reflections or flash reflections, whatever you have a reference photo for, these are quite vital for drawing. They make the eyes seem more alive than they would be without it. So even if I do not have these white dots on the reference photo, I do paint them in the drawing. And it, of course, do not have to be dots. It can also be some whatever shapes. If the person was looking towards a window, it will not be a dot. It will more be like a window shaped, a curved window shape. But for this size of the drawing, a dot is perfectly fine. And it makes the effect that you need to achieve. don't overdo the highlights. So really just use it for the brightest areas. If you use too many of them, it will miss the effect that you want to achieve. So really do use it for the brightest highlights. So basically this sums up my tips and tricks for drawing hair and parts of the face for this tutorial. If you have any questions in particular for this technique, please let me know in the comments. If you want to have a closer look on how to draw a nose or how to draw an eye, please let me know in the comments as well. So I will be happy to film this in more detail for you in higher resolution and slower if you like. Or if you have any questions in general, just let me know. I will be happy to assist you. And if you liked what I'm doing, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I will be happy to see you in my next video. Have a great day. Bye bye.